The first cracks in our perfect life began to show when I noticed how glued to her phone Lauren had become. At first, it was subtle, sneaking away during dinner to respond to texts, staying up late scrolling through social media. But over time, it escalated. Her Instagram feed was a shrine to us, or at least a version of us she wanted the world to see. Smiling selfies, pictures of our date nights, and carefully curated captions about love and gratitude. People adored her, constantly commenting on how lucky we were to have each other. And for a while, I believed it too. One evening, I came home from work to find Lauren sitting on the couch, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. She barely looked up when I walked in. "Tough day?" I asked, setting my bag down. "Just the usual," she replied absently, her thumbs swiping across the screen. I frowned. "What's so important on there?" She finally glanced up, a forced smile on her face. "Just checking messages. You know how it is." But I didn't know. And the way she quickly locked her phone and tucked it away didn't sit right with me. That night, after Lauren fell asleep, I found myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling. Her behavior had been off for weeks, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. I got out of bed, quietly grabbed her phone from the nightstand, and slipped into the living room. I told myself I was overreacting, that I'd find nothing more than harmless texts or endless group chats. But when I unlocked her phone, my stomach dropped. Among her usual apps was one I didn't recognize, a sleek black icon with no label. Curious, I tapped it. It opened to what looked like a second Instagram account. The username was cryptic, nothing like the polished persona Lauren projected online. The photos were even more shocking. Lauren, dressed provocatively, posing in ways I'd never seen before. Some were suggestive, others outright explicit. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the posts, each one tagged with comments from usernames I didn't recognize. "More like this, please. Worth every penny. Can't wait for the next drop." Penny? Drop? My head spun as I realized what I was looking at. Lauren wasn't just sharing these photos. She was selling them. My hand trembled as I locked Lauren's phone and set it on the coffee table. My mind reeled, trying to process what I'd just seen. This couldn't be real. There had to be an explanation, some kind of misunderstanding. But the comments didn't lie. The pictures didn't lie. Lauren had a secret life, one she'd meticulously hidden from me while selling a fantasy to strangers. I paced the living room, my thoughts spiraling. The polished image of our perfect marriage that she plastered on social media was a facade. Behind the scenes, she'd been crafting something entirely different, a persona built on seduction and secrecy. I needed answers, but confronting her wasn't an option. Not yet. Over the next few days, I became hyper-aware of Lauren's every move. The moment she slipped away with her phone, the sly smiles when a notification popped up, the way she always kept it within arm's reach, as though her entire world depended on it. I didn't have access to the app anymore, but I noticed an uptick in her late-night errands. When I asked where she was going, she'd brush it off. "Just running to the store," she'd say. But the store wasn't open at midnight. One evening, I followed her. Lauren left the house around 11:30, her phone in hand as she climbed into the car. I waited a few minutes before getting into mine, trailing her at a safe distance. She drove across town to a small photography studio. The lights inside were dim, but I could see movement through the windows. I parked down the street and watched as Lauren entered the building, carrying a duffel bag. My stomach churned. I waited for what felt like an eternity, each minute fueling my anger and confusion. Finally, Lauren emerged, her hair slightly disheveled, her phone glowing in her hand as she typed something. She looked around briefly before getting back into her car and driving off. I didn't follow her home. Instead, I parked outside the studio and waited for someone else to come out. About 15 minutes later, a man stepped out, a tall, well-dressed guy carrying a camera bag. He locked the door behind him and walked to his car. I debated confronting him, but I held back. I didn't need a fight. I needed information. As he pulled away, I snapped a photo of his license plate. That night, I barely slept. The image of Lauren leaving that studio, her secret account, the comments from her followers, it all played on a loop in my head. The woman I thought I knew was a stranger, and I was determined to find out why. The next morning, I couldn't shake the image of Lauren leaving the photography studio. The polished perfection she projected online felt like a cruel joke now. Her late-night trips, the secret photos, the man with the camera, it all pointed to something bigger than I'd imagined. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them by sitting around. The first thing I did was look up the license plate I'd photographed. With the help of a friend who owed me a favor, I traced it back to a man named Eric Cole, a professional photographer with a reputation for working discreetly with influencers. A quick search of his website confirmed it. He specialized in content creation, offering services to clients who wanted to grow their personal brands. It didn't take a genius to figure out what kind of content Lauren was creating. I debated confronting her right away, but I stopped myself. If I rushed into this without proof, she'd find a way to twist the story. Instead, I decided to dig deeper. That afternoon, while Lauren was at work, I logged onto our shared laptop and searched for any signs of her secret life. At first, I found nothing unusual until I checked the browser history. There it was, a trail of searches and logins tied to her burner account. A string of bookmarked links led to encrypted payment processors, private message boards, and even a group chat titled VIP subscribers. I clicked on one of the links, but it required a password. Frustrated, I slammed the laptop shut. Lauren had hidden her tracks well, but the evidence was piling up. That evening, I kept my composure as Lauren breezed through the door, her phone in hand as usual. "Hey," she said casually, leaning in for a quick kiss. "Hey," I replied, masking my anger with a forced smile. She disappeared into the bedroom, leaving me to stew in silence. After she fell asleep, I tried the laptop again. This time, I searched through her saved files and stumbled upon a folder hidden deep within the drive. It was labeled Private, Do Not Open. My heart raced as I clicked on it. Inside were hundreds of photos and videos, many of them the same ones I'd seen on her burner account. But there were also spreadsheets, detailed records of transactions, usernames, and subscription payments. Lauren wasn't just sharing content. She was running a business. The sheer scale of it left me breathless. Dozens of people, maybe hundreds, were paying for access to her photos and videos. And, judging by the numbers in the spreadsheet, it was lucrative. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Lauren wasn't cheating with one man. She was entertaining an entire audience. The realization hit me like a freight train. The late-night errands, the secrecy, the constant attention to her phone, it all made sense now. But there was one thing I still didn't understand why. The next day, I decided to confront Eric. If he'd been working with Lauren, he might have answers. I found his studio address online and drove there in the afternoon, determined to get the truth. When I arrived, Eric was outside, loading equipment into his car. "Eric Cole?" I called, stepping out of my car. He turned, a wary look on his face. "Who's asking?" "I'm Adam Connolly," I said, my voice steady. "Lauren's husband." His face paled, and he dropped the bag he was holding. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble. I'm not here to start a fight," I interrupted. "I just want to know the truth. What's your role in all of this?" Eric hesitated, glancing around as if expecting someone to jump out and ambush him. Finally, he sighed. "Fine," he said. "Let's talk." Eric led me into his studio, a sleek space lined with photography equipment and backdrops. The contrast between its polished appearance and the seedy reality of what had been happening here wasn't lost on me. He gestured for me to sit, but I stayed standing. "Talk," I said, crossing my arms. Eric sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I just take the photos, okay? I don't ask questions, and I don't get involved in people's personal lives." "Cut the crap," I snapped. "You've been working with my wife. I've seen the account, the photos, the payments. How long has this been going on?" Eric hesitated, then dropped into a chair, defeated. "Almost a year," he admitted. "She came to me saying she wanted to boost her brand. I didn't think much of it at first, just another influencer trying to stand out. But then she started asking for specific kinds of photos. Explicit ones," I said coldly. He nodded. "Yeah, she said they were for a private audience. I didn't know she was married until much later." "And when you found out?" He shrugged helplessly. "It wasn't my business. She was paying well, and I don't get involved in my client's personal drama." I clenched my fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Do you have any idea what this has done to me?" "To my marriage." "I get it, man," Eric said, holding up his hands. "But you need to know something. Lauren's not the only one doing this. She's part of a group, a network. They coach each other, share tips on how to maximize their followers, how to keep their identities hidden." "A network?" I repeated, the word hitting me like a brick. "Yeah," Eric said. "It's bigger than you think. and they're good at covering their tracks. My mind reeled. This wasn't just about Lauren anymore. It was about something much larger, a web of deception that went beyond our marriage. What else do you know? I asked, my voice tight. Eric hesitated, then stood and walked to a filing cabinet. He pulled out a folder and handed it to me. This is everything I've got on her, he said. Receipts, booking records, a few contracts she signed. If you're serious about finding the truth, this might help. I took the folder, my hands trembling. Why are you giving me this? Eric sighed. Because I'm tired of being part of this mess. And I guess I feel guilty. You seem like a decent guy. I didn't thank him. I couldn't. Instead, I turned and walked out, the folder tucked under my arm. That evening, I sat in my car outside our house, flipping through the contents of the folder. There were receipts for studio sessions, detailed breakdowns of her earnings, and, most damning of all, a copy of the contract she'd signed with the network Eric mentioned. The contract spelled out everything. How much of her earnings she owed the network, the anonymity guarantees, even clauses about how to handle domestic issues if her activities were discovered. Lauren had planned for this. When I finally walked into the house, she was sitting on the couch, her phone in hand, as always. You're late, she said, not looking up. I was busy, I replied curtly. Busy with what? I held up the folder, my expression cold. With this. Her face drained of color, and her phone slipped from her hand. Adam, I can explain. You'd better, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Because I've just uncovered more lies than I ever thought possible. Lauren stared at the folder in my hands, her face pale and her breathing shallow. Where did you get that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Does it matter? I snapped, dropping the folder onto the coffee table. The papers spilled out, her contracts and receipts glaring back at us like physical embodiments of her lies. What matters is that you've been lying to me for over a year. Not just about one affair. Not even about a few photos, but about an entire business built on betrayal. She sank back onto the couch, her hands trembling as she flipped through the documents. I never meant for you to find out like this, she said weakly. Then how are you planning on telling me? I asked, my voice laced with bitterness. Or were you just going to keep stringing me along while you entertained your audience? Tears filled her eyes, but they didn't move me. Not this time. Adam, please, she begged. Let me explain. You've had plenty of chances to explain, I said, cutting her off. Every time I asked about your late nights, your phone, your secretive behavior, you lied to my face. So why should I believe anything you say now? She crumpled, her sobs echoing through the room. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly overtaken by anger. I was drowning, she finally choked out. We were struggling with money, and I didn't know what else to do. At first, it was just supposed to be a way to help us. I didn't think it would go this far. You still here? Incredulous. You thought this was helping us? You thought turning our marriage into a lie and selling yourself to strangers was the solution. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. Well, congratulations, I said coldly. You failed. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Adam, I love you, she said desperately. This wasn't about love or betrayal. It was just business. Her words felt like a slap. Business? I repeated. That's how you justify this? By calling it a business? She didn't answer, her tears falling freely as she buried her face in her hands. I stood, pacing the room as the weight of it all bore down on me. The secrecy, the lies, the betrayal, it was too much. How many people know about this? I asked, my voice steady but icy. How many strangers have seen you like this while I sat here? Clueless? She shook her head. I don't know. Hundreds, maybe. The number hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't stay in the room any longer. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. Where are you going? Lauren called after me, panic in her voice. Somewhere you can't lie to me, I said, slamming the door behind me. I drove aimlessly, my mind racing. The love I once felt for Lauren was still there, buried under layers of betrayal and anger. But the woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. By the time I pulled into a quiet parking lot, the adrenaline had worn off, leaving a hollow ache in its place. I sat there, staring at the steering wheel, wondering how we'd gotten to this point, and if there was any way back. I spent the night in my car, parked in an empty lot far from home. The quiet was deafening, broken only by the occasional buzz of my phone. Lauren had been calling and texting nonstop, her desperation palpable in every message. Lauren, Adam, please come home. Lauren, I'm sorry. We need to talk. Lauren, don't give up on us. I stared at the screen, my emotions swinging wildly between anger and sorrow. Each message felt like a pull toward the life I thought we had, but the weight of her betrayal kept me rooted in place. By morning, I'd made a decision. I couldn't let Lauren control the narrative anymore. If I was going to figure out the truth, the whole truth, I needed to confront the network she was part of. Her contract listed the name of the organization, Virtus Media Collective. A quick search revealed their sleek website, advertising content creation services for influencers, entrepreneurs, and creatives. The site's polished exterior masked what I now knew was a far more insidious operation. I scrolled through their testimonials, my stomach churning with every glowing review. Working with Virtus changed my life, one client raved. Their strategies helped me reach new heights. I clicked on their contact page, noting an email address and phone number. Before I could second-guess myself, I dialed the number. A woman answered, her voice smooth and professional. Thank you for calling Virtus Media Collective. How can I assist you today? My name is Adam Connolly, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I have some questions about your services. Of course, she replied. Are you an influencer or creator looking to join our network? Not exactly, I said. My wife, Lauren Connolly, is one of your clients. I need to speak to someone about her account. There was a pause, and the woman's tone shifted slightly. I'm sorry, but we can't discuss client accounts without their consent. I'm not asking for details, I said quickly. I just need to know how your organization operates. What kind of services do you provide? Her hesitation was barely perceptible. We offer a range of services, including content strategy, audience engagement, and revenue optimization. And what about privacy? I pressed. Do you help your clients hide their activities from their families? Another pause. I think it's best if I connect you with someone from our legal team, she said. Please hold. The line went silent, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. Virtus wasn't just a support system for influencers. They were enablers, helping people like Lauren maintain their double lives. But before anyone from their legal team could pick up, I hung up. I had heard enough. That evening, I returned home. Lauren was sitting on the couch, her phone nowhere in sight for once. She jumped up as soon as I walked in, her eyes red from crying. Adam, she said, her voice trembling. I thought you weren't coming back. I'm not staying, I said, my tone cold. I just came to get some answers. She nodded, wringing her hands. Anything. I'll tell you anything. I sat across from her, fixing her with a hard stare. Tell me about Virtus Media Collective. Her face paled, and she sank back into the couch. How do you know about them? I called them, I said. They weren't exactly forthcoming, but I know enough. How deep does this go, Lauren? How long have you been working with them? She hesitated, tears pooling in her eyes. Since the beginning, she admitted. They reached out to me after I started posting on my burner account. They said they could help me grow my audience and monetize my content. And you said yes, I said bitterly. She nodded. I was desperate, Adam. We were drowning in debt, and I thought this could help. Her words stung, but I wasn't ready to let her off the hook. How much money are we talking about? She looked away, her voice barely audible. Enough to pay off the credit cards. Enough to keep us afloat. Enough to lie to me for a year. I shot back. Lauren flinched, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. I was trying to protect us. Protect us? I repeated, my voice rising. Do you even hear yourself? You didn't protect anything, Lauren. You destroyed it. She broke down, sobbing into her hands. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity, but I pushed it aside. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, and hers was gone. Lauren's sobs filled the room, but I didn't move to comfort her. The woman sitting across from me wasn't the person I thought I'd married. She was a stranger, someone who had hidden an entire life from me for over a year. Why didn't you just tell me? I asked, my voice hollow. If you were struggling, if you thought this was the only way, why didn't you talk to me? She wiped her face, her hands trembling. I was ashamed, she said. It started small, just a few photos, a way to make some extra money. But then it grew, and I didn't know how to stop. You didn't want to stop. I shot back. Lauren flinched, but she didn't argue. Instead, she buried her face in her hands, her words muffled by her sobs. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't mean to hurt you. Her words felt empty, rehearsed, and I had no patience for them. Spare me the apologies, I said coldly. I'm not here for excuses. I'm here for the truth. I stood and paced the room, the weight of everything I'd uncovered pressing down on me. Virtus Media Collective wasn't just a network. It was a machine designed to exploit people's insecurities and turn their lives into commodities. And Lauren had willingly fed into it. How many people know about this? I asked, turning to face her. She hesitated, her eyes darting away. I don't know. Hundreds, maybe thousands. My account has grown a lot. My stomach churned. The idea of so many strangers knowing more about my wife than I did was nauseating. I need to see it, I said abruptly. Lauren looked up confused. See what? Your account, I said firmly. The photos, the messages, everything. I need to know exactly what you've been hiding. She hesitated, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Adam, I don't think you owe me this. I interrupted, my voice sharp. After everything you've done, the least you can do is be honest with me now. Reluctantly, she unlocked her phone and handed it to me. I opened the app with the black icon, the one that had started this nightmare. The account was even worse than I'd imagined. Photos of Lauren in lingerie, suggestive poses, private messages from subscribers begging for more content. Some were crude, others disturbingly intimate, as though they believed they knew her. My chest tightened as I scrolled through the posts, each one a betrayal. You did all of this, I said, my voice shaking. For money. It wasn't just the money, she admitted, her voice small. It was the attention. I felt invisible, Adam, like I wasn't enough. Her words hit like a slap. I stared at her, the woman I'd loved, the woman I thought I'd spent years building a life with. And now? I asked bitterly, do you still feel invisible? She didn't answer, her silence more damning than any confession. I handed the phone back to her, my hands trembling with anger. I can't do this, I said, turning toward the door. Adam, wait, she cried, rushing after me. I stopped, my hand on the doorknob. This isn't over, I said quietly. But I can't be here right now. I walked out, the cold night air biting in my skin as I got into my car. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just needed to get away. As I drove, the weight of everything settled on my shoulders. The betrayal, the lies, the strangers who knew things about my wife that I didn't. It was too much to process. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let this end here. The next morning, I woke up in the parking lot of a roadside motel, the events of the previous night hitting me like a freight train. My mind replayed Lauren's confession, the account, the messages, every detail a fresh wound. I decided to go back home, not to forgive her, but to figure out my next move. When I walked through the door, Lauren was sitting on the couch, her eyes puffy and red. I didn't think you were coming back, she said softly. I'm not here to talk about us, I replied curtly. I need more answers. Lauren nodded, her shoulders slumping. What do you want to know? Everything about Virtus, I said. How do they find you? What exactly do they do? She hesitated, but after a moment, she sighed and began to explain. They approached me after I started posting anonymously, she said. They said they could help me grow my account, make real money. They handled everything, marketing, security, even dealing with subscribers. I frowned. Dealing with them how? She looked away. They monitor interactions, make sure no one gets too personal. But they also encourage creators to engage more, to build relationships. Her words made my skin crawl. This wasn't just a business. It was a well-oiled machine designed to exploit both creators and their audiences. Did you ever meet anyone from the network in person? I asked. Lauren shook her head. No, but I've talked to my manager. She's the one who handles all the logistics. That was my next lead, the manager. I spent the rest of the day digging deeper into Virtus. Their website was flashy but vague, offering no real contact information beyond a generic email. I decided to go back to the phone number I'd called earlier. This time, I didn't hang up when they offered to connect me to their legal team. A man answered, his voice calm and professional. This is Mark, head of compliance for Virtus Media Collective. How can I help you? Adam Connolly, I said. My wife, Lauren, is one of your clients. There was a brief pause. I see. Is there an issue with her account? There's an issue with your entire operation, I said bluntly. I know how you exploit creators. I know about the contracts, the secrecy. You've built a business on deception, and I want answers. Mark chuckled, the sound cold and calculated. Mr. Connolly, I understand your concerns, but Virtus operates within the bounds of the law. Any agreements made with your wife were entirely voluntary. Voluntary? I snapped. You manipulate people into selling their privacy, and then trap them with contracts they can't escape. That's not voluntary, it's predatory. Mr. Connolly, Mark said, his tone sharp now. If you continue to make baseless accusations, we will have no choice but to pursue legal action. I suggest you tread carefully. The line went dead, leaving me fuming. Virtus was more than just a shady network. It was a fortress, and they weren't going to let me tear it down easily. When I told Lauren about the call, her face went pale. You shouldn't have done that, she said, her voice trembling. Why not? I asked, my frustration boiling over. What are they going to do? Expose me? Take me to court? It's not you I'm worried about, she whispered. They'll come after me. Her fear was real, and it sent a chill down my spine. Virtus wasn't just a network. They were a shadowy organization with the power to ruin lives. But they didn't scare me. If they wanted a fight, I was ready to give them one. The day after my call with Virtus, I noticed Lauren acting more withdrawn than usual. She barely spoke, her phone untouched on the coffee table. For someone who had spent so much time glued to it, her avoidance felt deliberate. What's wrong? I asked cautiously. She hesitated, wringing her hands. They contacted me, she said finally. Who? I demanded, though I already knew the answer. Virtus, she said, her voice trembling. My manager called this morning. She said they're aware of your interference. They told me to remind you that everything I've done is documented and legal. If you push this further, they'll retaliate. Retaliate. The word sent a chill down my spine, but it also fueled my determination. What exactly does that mean? I asked, my voice sharp. Lauren shook her head. I don't know, but they've warned me before. If anyone threatens their operations, they'll make sure we're the ones who pay the price. I clenched my fists, the anger boiling beneath my skin. They're bluffing, I said. They're just trying to scare us. But what if they're not? She whispered, her voice breaking. That night, I stayed up late, poring over everything I'd gathered about Virtus. Their business model was airtight, their legal team ruthless. Exposing them would take more than a few phone calls and accusations. I needed proof, something they couldn't dismiss or bury. The problem was figuring out where to find it. The answer came unexpectedly. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from an anonymous sender, the subject line reading, Virtus isn't invincible. I opened it cautiously, my heart racing. Inside was a single sentence. If you want to take them down, follow the money. Attached was a document, a spreadsheet detailing payments from Virtus to offshore accounts, along with a list of client names and transaction amounts. Lauren's name was there, along with dozens of others. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. This was it, the crack in their armor. Virtus wasn't just exploiting creators. They were hiding massive sums of money through illegal channels. I had no idea who had sent the email, but I didn't care. This was the leverage I needed. The next morning, I showed Lauren the document. Her eyes widened as she scanned the list of names and payments. This is illegal, she whispered. Exactly, I said. If we expose this, Virtus won't just lose their creators. They'll lose everything. Lauren looked at me, fear and hope warring in her expression. But what if they come after us? They already are, I replied. But now we can fight back. I contacted Detective Harper, the one person I trusted to handle this. When I showed him the spreadsheet, his eyes narrowed. This is big, he said, his tone serious. If this is legit, it's more than just fraud. We could be looking at organized crime charges. Then let's use it, I said. Take them down. Harper agreed to open an investigation, but he warned me to tread carefully. If Virtus gets wind of this, they'll do everything they can to cover their tracks. And if they think you're involved, I know the risk, I said firmly. But I'm not backing down. That evening, I told Lauren what Harper had said. She looked more anxious than ever, her hands trembling as she held Caleb in her lap. I'm scared, Adam, she admitted. What if they come after Caleb? What if they try to ruin us? They won't, I said, though the certainty in my voice felt like a lie. We're not alone in this anymore. But deep down, I knew Virtus wouldn't go down without a fight. And we were the ones standing in their way. The next few days felt like a waiting game. Detective Harper assured me the investigation was underway. But he also warned me that Virtus wouldn't take this lying down. Lauren was a nervous wreck. She jumped at every sound, checked the locks on the doors twice before bed, and kept Caleb close at all times. Her fear was contagious. On the third day, her anxiety proved justified. I was in the kitchen when Lauren called out from the living room. Her voice panicked. Adam, you need to see this. I rushed to her side, where she sat clutching her phone. She held it up, showing me a private message she'd received on her burner account. Anonymous, we know what you've done. Stop now, or you'll regret it. A cold dread settled over me as I read the message. They're watching us, Lauren whispered, her voice trembling. Let me see that, I said, taking the phone from her. I checked the sender's profile, but it was blank. No posts, no followers, nothing to trace. They're trying to intimidate us, I said. It's just a scare tactic. Lauren shook her head. What if it's more than that? Her fears were confirmed later that night. As we sat in the living room, the baby monitor on the coffee table crackled to life. At first, it was just static, but then we heard it, a voice. Stop what you're doing, Adam. My blood ran cold. I grabbed the monitor, staring at it as if it could somehow explain what was happening. The voice didn't repeat, but the damage was done. They hacked it, Lauren said, her voice barely above a whisper. They're in our home. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed my phone and called Harper. They're escalating, I told him, my voice tight with anger and fear. First messages, now this. Harper didn't sound surprised. They're trying to rattle you, make you back off. But it's good. It means they're scared. Keep everything documented, and we'll add it to the case. That's not enough, I said. I need to protect my family. You need to stay calm, Harper replied. The more they push, the more desperate they'll get. That's when we'll have them. I hung up, but Harper's reassurances did little to ease my nerves. I spent the rest of the night checking the locks, the cameras, even the baby monitor itself, looking for any sign of tampering. Lauren stayed up with me, her face pale and drawn. They won't stop, will they? She asked quietly. No, I admitted. Not until we finish this. The next morning, I took a drastic step. I called a cybersecurity expert, a friend of a friend, who owed me a favor. He arrived that afternoon, a wiry man named Ethan who looked more comfortable behind a keyboard than in a living room. Let's see what we're dealing with, he said, setting up his laptop. It didn't take him long to find the problem. They've breached your Wi-Fi, he explained. Whoever did this is good. They've been piggybacking on your network to access the baby monitor and any other connected devices. Can you block them? I asked. Already done, Ethan said. But it's only a temporary fix. If they really want to get back in, they will. You need to take this to the authorities. I nodded, my mind racing. Virtus wasn't just a shadowy organization. They were a well-oiled machine with the resources to monitor and intimidate anyone who crossed them. But I refused to let them win. As Ethan packed up his equipment, he handed me a small USB drive. Here's everything I found, he said. It's not much, but it might help your case. Thank you, I said, gripping the drive tightly. That night, Lauren and I sat in the living room, the weight of it all pressing down on us. What if they come after us again? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They will, I said. But this time, we'll be ready. The house felt like a fortress. Every locked door and camera a reminder of how far things had spiraled. Lauren was jumpy, and I was exhausted, the stress of constant vigilance wearing us both down. But Virtus wasn't backing off. 2 days after the baby monitor incident, I received an email. Unlike the anonymous threats Lauren had gotten, this one came directly from Virtus Media Collective's legal team. Subject: Cease and desist notice. The message was cold and clinical, accusing me of defamation and intentional interference in their operations. They demanded I stop all attempts to contact their clients or representatives and warned of legal consequences if I continued. Attached was a list of supposed damages, a figure so absurdly high it made my head spin. They're trying to scare us, I told Lauren, forwarding the email to Detective Harper. But this just proves we're getting to them. Later that evening, Harper called me back. The cease and desist is a smokescreen, he said. They're trying to intimidate you into backing off. Don't respond, and don't delete anything. It's all evidence. What's the next step? I asked. We've submitted the financial documents you provided to a forensic accountant, Harper said. If their records are as shady as they look, we'll have grounds for a federal investigation. And how long will that take? It depends, Harper admitted. But Virtus is big. This won't be over quickly. That night, I decided to push back in my own way. I went back to Lauren's burner account, scrolling through her followers. Most were faceless usernames, but a handful stood out. Other creators, people who seemed to be part of the same network. One name in particular caught my attention, Glamour Guru 89. The account had thousands of followers and posted similar content to Lauren's, but their bio included an unusual line. DM me for tips and tricks. It was a long shot, but I sent them a message. I think we might have something in common. I need to talk to you about Virtus Media Collective. I didn't expect a response, but an hour later, my phone buzzed. Glamour Guru 89. Who are you? And how do you know about Virtus? I'm Adam Connolly. My wife is one of their clients, and we're trying to expose what they're doing. The reply came quickly. Glamour Guru 89. Are you insane? They'll ruin you. My heart raced as I typed back. They're already trying. But we have evidence, financial records, contracts. If you know something, please help us. There was a long pause before the next message. Glamour Guru 89. I can't say much here. Too risky. But I know things that could destroy them. Meet me tomorrow. 3 p.m. Riverview Cafe. The next day, I told Harper about the meeting. He offered to send someone to watch from a distance just in case it was a setup. I agreed, my nerves on edge as I headed to the cafe. I spotted Glamour Guru 89 immediately. A young woman sitting in the corner, her sunglasses and baseball cap doing little to disguise her. Are you Adam? She asked as I approached. Yes, I said, sitting across from her. What do you know? She glanced around nervously before leaning in. Virtus isn't just a network. It's a blackmail operation, she whispered. They recruit creators, promise them money and security, and then trap them with their own content. If anyone tries to leave, they threaten to leak everything. My blood ran cold. Have they done it before? She nodded. More than once. They ruined one girl I knew, posted her private photos online when she tried to quit. She lost everything. I clenched my fists, anger boiling inside me. Why haven't you gone to the authorities? Because they're everywhere, she said, her voice shaking. They have connections, lawyers, influencers, even law enforcement, people who look the other way. Not this time, I said firmly. We have evidence. If you come forward, it could be the tipping point we need. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay, I'll help, but we have to move fast. If they find out I'm talking to you, I'm as good as dead. Driving home from the meeting with Glamour Guru 89, my mind raced with the implications of what she had revealed. Virtus wasn't just exploiting creators. It was weaponizing their content against them. Lauren was waiting for me when I got back, her anxiety etched into her face. How did it go? She asked, her voice trembling. I sat down beside her, recounting everything the woman had told me. They're worse than we thought, I said. But she's willing to help us. She has inside information, proof that Virtus has blackmailed people into staying silent. Lauren looked pale, clutching Caleb closer. Do you really think we can stop them? We have to, I replied. The next day, Harper arranged a secure location for us to meet with Glamour Guru 89 again. This time, she brought a folder of documents, emails, screenshots, and even recorded phone calls between Virtus managers and creators. These are the kinds of threats they make, she explained, showing us a transcript of a call where a Virtus representative told a creator they'd ruin her career if she didn't comply. This is exactly what we need, Harper said, his tone resolute. With this and the financial records, we can build a case strong enough to bring them down. But as we worked to compile the evidence, Virtus struck back harder than ever. That evening, Lauren's burner account was hacked. She discovered it when she tried to log in and was met with an error message. This account has been deactivated for violating our terms of service. She stared at her phone, her hands trembling. They shut me down, she whispered. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email, this time from an anonymous address. Subject: This is your last warning. The message was brief, but chilling. Back off, Adam. You don't know who you're dealing with. This isn't a game. I forwarded the email to Harper, who called me almost immediately. "They're panicking," he said. "The closer we get, the more desperate they'll become. But don't engage. Let us handle it." Lauren, however, was unraveling. "They're going to destroy us," she said, pacing the living room. "They'll leak everything, my photos, my videos. They'll humiliate us, ruin Caleb's future." I grabbed her by the shoulders, forcing her to look at me. "We're not giving up," I said firmly. "They don't get to win. Not this time." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. The next day, Harper called with a breakthrough. "The forensic accountant found a series of offshore accounts linked to Virtus," he said. "They've been funneling money through shell companies to avoid taxes and hide payouts to their higher-ups. It's enough to warrant a federal investigation." Finally, it felt like the tide was turning. But just as we began to breathe easier, Virtus launched their most devastating attack yet. That evening, Lauren's personal social media accounts were hacked. Her private photos, ones she'd never intended to share, were leaked across multiple platforms. When she found out, she collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. "They're exposing me," she cried. "They're exposing everything." I stared at her phone, rage bubbling inside me as I saw the comments flooding in. Mockery, cruelty, and outright threats. "They're trying to silence us," I said, my voice trembling. "But they just gave us even more proof of what they are." I immediately called Harper, who assured me the leaks would only strengthen the case against Virtus. "This shows their pattern of behavior," he said. "We'll use it to bury them." But the damage to Lauren was done. She spent the rest of the night locked in the bedroom, refusing to come out even when Caleb cried. I sat with my son, holding him close as I tried to figure out how to pick up the pieces. Virtus thought they'd broken us, but all they'd done was make me more determined than ever to destroy them. The fallout from Virtus's attack was immediate and devastating. Lauren's leaked photos spread like wildfire, appearing on shady websites and forums. Despite my efforts to shield her from the worst of it, the damage was done. For the first time in days, Lauren left the bedroom. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. "I can't do this anymore, Adam," she said. "They've won." "No," I said firmly. "They haven't. They think they've silenced us, but they've only proven how far they'll go to protect themselves. We have them cornered, Lauren. We can't give up now." Detective Harper agreed. The leak was more than just an act of desperation. It was an admission of guilt. "They've shown their hand," he said during our latest meeting. "We're submitting everything to the federal prosecutors. The financial records, the leaked content, and the evidence of coercion. This is no longer just a case of fraud. It's a criminal enterprise." But Virtus wasn't finished. The next day, I received a text from an unknown number. "Unknown, your son deserves better. Walk away, or he'll pay the price for your stubbornness." My blood ran cold. I immediately called Harper, forwarding him the message. "This is escalating fast," he said grimly. "We're assigning a protective detail to your family. Don't go anywhere alone, and don't let your guard down." The threat felt like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just about Lauren or me anymore. Virtus was willing to go after Caleb to protect their empire. That night, I stayed awake, watching the security feeds and keeping a baseball bat within arm's reach. Every creak of the house made my heart race, but the hours passed without incident. Lauren stayed quiet, the weight of everything crushing her spirit. I wanted to comfort her, but I didn't know how. The next morning, Harper called with an update. "We've secured warrants to seize Virtus's servers and financial records," he said. "It's happening tomorrow morning. Once we have their data, it's game over." Relief washed over me, but it was tempered by the knowledge that Virtus wouldn't go down quietly. "Will they know it's coming?" I asked. "Unlikely," Harper replied. "But stay alert. If they suspect anything, they might lash out." That evening, I sat with Lauren, trying to reassure her. "It's almost over," I said. "By this time tomorrow, Virtus will be dismantled, and we can start rebuilding." She nodded weakly, but her expression was distant. "What if it's too late, Adam? What if there's nothing left to rebuild?" I took her hand, squeezing it gently. "There's always something left. We'll get through this, together." For the first time in days, she leaned into me, her tears soaking my shirt as I held her. The next day dawned with an eerie calm. Harper kept me updated as the raid on Virtus's headquarters unfolded. "We've got their servers," he reported over the phone. "Everything is being cataloged and sent to the forensics team. It's only a matter of time now." But Virtus had one last move to play. As I hung up with Harper, my phone buzzed with a new notification. It was a live video, streamed from one of Virtus's remaining accounts. The screen showed a room filled with files, hard drives, and burning documents. A masked figure stood in the center, addressing the camera. To those who thought they could destroy us, the figure said, their voice distorted. You've made a grave mistake. This is only the beginning. The screen went dark. I called Harper immediately, relaying what I'd seen. They're trying to destroy evidence, he said, his voice tense. But they can't erase everything. We've already secured enough to bring them down. Still, the message left me uneasy. Virtus wasn't just a network. They were a machine, one that wouldn't go down without a fight. That night, as the weight of everything settled over me, I realized how far we'd come, and how much further we still had to go. Virtus had tried to break us, but they'd underestimated one thing: our resilience. The morning after Virtus's ominous broadcast, the air felt heavy with anticipation. Harper called early, his tone clipped but determined. The raid was a success, he said. We've recovered enough evidence to dismantle Virtus's operations. But the cleanup is going to be messy. They've already started purging their digital footprint. They're trying to erase themselves, I said grimly. Exactly, Harper replied. But we've got enough. Their offshore accounts, internal communications, and blackmail tactics, it's all documented. Now we just need to make it stick. Lauren was sitting on the couch, holding Caleb as I relayed the news. She looked relieved, but wary. Does this mean it's over? She asked quietly. Not yet, I said. But we're close. She nodded, though the tension in her shoulders didn't ease. Virtus's threats still hung over us, a reminder that they weren't above retaliation. That evening, Harper arranged a secure meeting with the forensic team working on the Virtus case. Lauren and I sat across from the lead investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Sheila, who had spread folders of documents across the table. Virtus ran like a shadow corporation, Sheila explained. They used shell companies to launder money, paid off enforcers to silence dissent, and weaponized private content to control their creators. She flipped through the pages, pointing to a list of names. We've identified key players in their operation. Once we bring them in, the rest will collapse. Lauren shifted uncomfortably. And what happens to the creators? The ones they blackmail. They'll be treated as victims, Sheila assured her. Most of them will have their content scrubbed from the web, and any debts tied to Virtus will be nullified. But it'll take time. Lauren nodded, her expression a mix of relief and lingering guilt. It's just hard to believe I was part of something like this. Later that night, I received another call from Harper. His tone was urgent. Adam, we've received reports of unusual activity near your house, he said. It's probably nothing, but I'm sending a patrol car to keep an eye on things. Thanks, I said, the tension in my chest tightening again. Around midnight, as I sat watching the security feeds, the cameras near the driveway picked up movement. A dark figure appeared, pacing near the edge of the property. My heart raced as I grabbed my phone to call Harper. We've got someone, I said quickly. They're outside. Stay inside, Harper instructed. Officers are on their way. Minutes later, the patrol car pulled up, its lights flashing. The figure darted into the shadows, but one of the officers gave chase. After a tense few moments, the officer returned, a man in handcuffs struggling in his grip. I stepped outside cautiously, my pulse pounding. Who is he? I asked, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The officer looked at me grimly. We're not sure yet, but he had this. He held up a small device, something that looked like a signal jammer. They were trying to disable your cameras, he explained. Good thing we got here when we did. As the officers drove the man away, I stood in the driveway, the night air cold against my skin. Lauren joined me, her face pale. They're getting desperate, I said. They're not going to stop, are they? She whispered. They will, I said firmly, because we're not giving up. The next morning, Harper called with the news we'd been waiting for. We've arrested several key figures from Virtus, he said. With their leadership gone, the organization is crumbling. The charges we're filing will make sure they can't rebuild. I exhaled deeply, the weight of the past week starting to lift. Does this mean it's over? I asked. It's over, Harper confirmed. Virtus is finished. I hung up, turning to Lauren. She was sitting with Caleb, a tentative smile on her face. It's done, I said. They're gone. Her shoulders sagged with relief. and for the first time in weeks, I saw a glimmer of peace in her eyes. The days after Virtus's collapse were quiet, almost eerily so. For weeks, our lives had been consumed by chaos, fear, and uncertainty. Now, the absence of those emotions left a strange void. Lauren and I sat on the back porch one evening, watching Caleb play in the yard. The late summer sun cast long shadows, and the air was warm and still. "They're really gone?" she asked softly, breaking the silence. "They are," I replied. "Harper said the arrests are holding. The evidence is airtight. Virtus won't be coming back from this." She nodded, her gaze fixed on Caleb. "It feels strange, doesn't it? Like we should feel more relieved." "I think it'll take time," I said. "We've been on edge for so long, it's hard to just let go." Lauren turned to me, her expression tentative. "Do you think we'll ever be okay again? As a family?" Her question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken emotions. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "I don't know," I admitted. "What happened, it changed things. Trust doesn't just come back overnight." Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. "I know, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn it back. For you, for Caleb." For a moment, I let her words settle. I wanted to believe her, to let myself hope that we could rebuild what had been broken. But part of me knew that some wounds never fully heal. "We'll see," I said finally. "For now, let's just focus on Caleb, on giving him the life he deserves." Lauren smiled through her tears. "That's all I want." Over the following weeks, life began to normalize. Harper kept me updated on the case, which was already making headlines. Virtus's downfall had become a national story, exposing their corruption and exploitation to the world. Messages started pouring in, some from former creators thanking us for taking a stand, others from people who had been inspired by our fight. Each message was a reminder that we hadn't just fought for ourselves. We'd fought for everyone who had been trapped in Virtus's web. One afternoon, I received an unexpected email. It was from the anonymous whistleblower who had first sent me the financial documents. Subject: "You did it." Message: "I never thought anyone could take Virtus down. You proved me wrong. Thank you for fighting back." I stared at the screen, a small smile tugging at my lips. For the first time, I felt a sense of closure. But the biggest challenge was rebuilding my relationship with Lauren. She started therapy, both individually and with me, trying to unpack the choices that had led to her involvement with Virtus. It wasn't easy. There were days when the pain felt insurmountable, when I questioned whether forgiveness was even possible. But we kept trying. One evening, as we sat on the couch after putting Caleb to bed, Lauren handed me a small envelope. "What's this?" I asked, opening it cautiously. Inside was a handwritten letter, an apology she'd been working on for weeks. "I wanted to put it all down," she said quietly. Everything I couldn't say out loud. I read the letter in silence, her words raw and heartfelt. She admitted her mistakes, acknowledged the pain she'd caused, and promised to spend the rest of her life making amends. When I finished, I looked at her, tears in my eyes. "Thank you," I said. She reached for my hand, and for the first time in a long time, I let her hold it. Months later, I stood in the backyard, watching Caleb toddle through the grass with a ball in his hands. Lauren was nearby, laughing as he tried to kick it, and stumbled. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sense of peace. What would you do if you uncovered a betrayal this deep? Could you forgive, or is there a point of no return? Share your thoughts below.